welcome. This is the second video in our Garden Star Sampler series. This video series is intended to support the Beyond Beginner class at Summers Haven, and you will need the pattern. So at this point, we should have all of our pieces cut out. I've got all mine organized, and they're all in little labeled baggies. In each of these baggies, I have enough to make 2 of each of the blocks. I'm going to be making the 12-inch finished blocks. The pattern does include the directions for making the 6-inch finished block as well. So this next section in your pattern, after your cutting tables, goes through some techniques for completing your blocks. It gives you techniques for making half square triangle units, for making flying geese units, and for making quarter square triangle units. I'm going to be demonstrating each of those in our tutorials, but there are really great directions and photos included in your pattern that you can follow along. I'm going to begin now on page 7 in your pattern, which is the New England Star block. This is a beautiful block. It's a pretty simple block. It is going to use some half square triangles. I have all of my pieces right now laid out on my design board so that I'm ready to make my half square triangles. This ensures that I've got all of my pieces in the right place and that I've cut the right number of pieces. One of my first steps is in getting ready to make these half square triangles, I'm going to draw a line across, a diagonal line across all of my light background squares that I'm going to be using, the larger light background square that I'm going to be using to make my half square triangle. You should have 2 of these in each of the 4 corners for each of your blocks. So that means that you'll have 8. No, you should have 1 of these for each of the 4 corners for each of your blocks, which means for 2 blocks, which is remember we'll be making 2 of every one of the blocks. So you should have a total of 8 for this block. All right, sorry, I got a little bit tongue-tied there. All right, so we're going to go through and we're going to draw a diagonal line across from one corner to the other. I'm using my friction marker. I really prefer the friction markers because they go smoothly across the fabric. You can see how smoothly that went across. Okay, I've already done that for all of the rest of my squares, so I'm ready to start making my half square triangles. You can see there I've drawn that diagonal line. I'm going to put my fabrics right sides together. I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 on both sides of that diagonal line. So I'm going to complete that step for all of mine, and then I'll be right back so that we can talk about squaring these up. Okay, so I have pressed all of my half square triangles. I've pressed them to the dark. I've got them ready to go and ready to square up. To square them up, I'm going to take my ruler, and this is one of my square rulers. This one's a 4.5. You see this 45-degree mark right here? I'm going to place that directly onto that seam in the half square triangle. And then I'm going to line it up so that these 2 edges here are just past the mark. So for example, let's say I want a 4-inch square or 3-inch square twin. I'm going to have that edge just past because I actually want to be able to trim all 4 sides. So I'm going to trim these 2 sides here first, and it's going to take off that dog ear there. Then I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to lay my square triangle back on there. Now I'm going to line it up exactly at the mark that I want to be square, exactly at the size that I want to be squaring it up to. And I've got that 45-degree laying right on the seam, and I'm going to trim the remaining 2 edges and that last dog ear. And you can see now I've got a perfectly square half square triangle. Once you've done that to all of your half square triangles, and you should have all these half square triangles here, you're going to place them. Now, this is where a board like this really comes in handy, because what you don't want to happen is as you're assembling them, you don't want to accidentally have one of these turned the wrong way, and you're going to have to rip that out. So I've got these all laid out and ready to go. So now my next step is going to be that I'm going to start taking these and putting my rows together. So I'm going to go through and put each of my rows together. So I'll take these two, I'll put them right sides together, and I'll stitch. And then I'll go to the next one. Now, because we have these sashing pieces here, you're not going to be able to go all the way across that row. So when I say rows together, you're going to need to put your corner units together, and then you'll put the whole row together. So I'm going to assemble this corner unit here, and then I'll put my rows together. So let me show you what that looks like right now. So I'm going to take these two and I'll put these right sides together. I'll stitch them with my 1/4 inch seam. So I've got that one there. I'm going to press it to the dark. I'm just finger pressing right now. I'm going to take the next one. Now, because I pressed this one that direction, I want to press this next one in the other direction. And that's so that I can nest those seams. So I've done a little finger press, and now I'm going to nest those seams. And you can see that my seam allowance is going here on the top one and to the other side there. So I'm going to put a pin in this, and then I'll stitch these together with a 1/4 inch seam. I like to put a pin when I nest seams together like this. I like to put a pin right up next to the seam. That way it doesn't wiggle on me while I'm stitching those together. So I can see I've still got that nested really nicely, and I'm going to stitch that 1/4 inch seam across there. Okay. All right. I stitched my 1/4 inch seam there, and you can see that I've got that corner unit put together. I'm going to do the same with each of my corner units, and then I'll be ready to assemble across this row, the center, and these.